version.
You have the latest version from like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I did post it in the team, so it's replaced an old file in the team's files, but I didn't email it out yet.
Okay. All right. So what Claire was talking about for everyone is, first of all, we're waiting for Mike to try and log in. We can see him. He was on for a second. Now he has disappeared. But hopefully we'll be back in a second. So Mike has developed a new Osmia mail guide. You saw a draft the last time when I got cut off. And at this time, it's an updated version. You can use the old version. I've looked at both, at least on the front pages. It's about the same. So we'll start with that. And if we want to, I'm going to share. I guess you have no control of whether you want to or not. I'm going to share my screen here and open up Mike's key. We'll use that as a guide, and we can use Discover Life features and things too. And you know the deal. You can look up things yourselves and use the tools that you have on hand. Okay, so now let's go to Mike's key, and I'm going to make this larger. Are we seeing it, Claire?
We are seeing it. If you can make it larger and click the button, the enable editing button.
Okay.
That looks good.
All right. I think we're there. So before we were cut off last time, we did talk about the special features that conjuncta and subfasciata have in terms of these very prominent angles and lobes, angles and conjuncta and lobes and subfasciata on that rear T6 rib. And then things went south and we had to stop the recording because our internet provider decided to cut us off. So the next stage here is this section here 4, where we're going to pull out, I want to say it's Osmia sensu strictu. I can't remember though. It's a group of Osmia that are in a subgenus. Someone could put into the chat if that is indeed really a sensu strictu situation. But these are large Osmias. They are the ones that are involved with hole nesting and commercial, the commercial trade in Osmia species, primarily bucephala, which we'll mention here, is usually not, because it doesn't seem to occur in these, or like the tubes that are placed out by people, but Lignaria, cornifrons, and taurus definitely are. And in the males in particular, the cornifrons and taurus are problematic, but Mike has a good character. Is that him on there now? Is Mike in?
No, that was
okay.
Somebody else.
That was you. Okay. And then telling the Lignaria from cornifrons and taurus, I like Mike's technique more than the one that we put up in Discover Life. So, and as most people know, cornifrons and taurus are of Asian derivation, relatively recent additions to the Eastern fauna, and bucephala and Lignaria are native to the region. So I'm going to flip now to show you the basic character of that brings all 4 of those species out from the remainder of the males, which is let me do a full screen thing here, which is a smooth rear T7. So in the other species, what you'll see is a notch right here of some kind. And I don't know what the function is, but there's always some kind. You never have this, what they would call an entire rim. There's always some kind of emargination or notch-like cutout there, sometimes quite distinctive when you look at it. So, so that brings them out. What we're looking at, though, in terms of the species, is the very distinct and with all kinds of lovely characters that we'll go over now, Osmia bucephala, named after Alexander the Great's horse, of course, Bucephalus, which was a giant horse, apparently. Okay, so in So we'll just approach now bucephala characteristics. So one character, and this is one that is very useful for separating it from Lignaria, is this fact. Let's back up. Lignaria and bucephala are separated from taurus and cornifrons by the extensive amount of black here on T3 to T5. So you can see T7, I think that's T7. T7 here has a lot of white hairs, but this T3 to 5 area has mostly black hairs in both those species. And in cornifrons and taurus, what you're going to see is a mix of hairs, but it's going to include many quite extensive amounts of pale and longer hairs in comparison. Now, so this is telling us, oh, we're looking at that one subgroup that has the entire rim. We're looking at the two species, native species that have extensive black on 3 to 5. And now we want to separate bucephala, which this species is, from Lignaria. Do we have Mike back? Okay. Anyway, so one is, if we look at the hind tibia, you can see the two hind tibial spurs, which usually in most bee species are roughly the same, but every once in a while you get something different and useful. And you can see here that I don't know what to call this one. One is short and one is about twice the length. Very distinctive. Lignaria is, which unfortunately I don't have a specimen of, is approaching the same size here, but that's one distinct one. And I think that also separates it. We can look at that from cornifrons and taurus if there was any question. So the character that I mostly look for when I'm looking at bucephala, and I don't really need any other character, it's usually abundantly clear. First of all, this species is the largest of the Osmia, at least in the east. What we're, maybe the other side will be slightly better. I can see this character, which is going to be the expanded tarsal segments on the middle leg. Okay, here we go. So these are so relatively dramatic. I don't need to look at any of these other things. Usually I have a hint that, oh, look at that big Osmia, that's going to be bucephala. But to just lock in, because it could overlap with Lignaria, is if you look at these tarsal segments, let me zoom in here. Bring it onto screen. These tarsal segments are really unusual. Most tarsal segments in most bees would basically be something close to a cylinder that follows the long line of the tarsus. But in this case, each of the tarsal segments has these huge projecting wings coming out there. I don't think there's even any other species in other groups that have that I can think of in North America. So that's super distinctive, and that's the character that I'm using to confirm that I indeed have a male bucephala. So thank you, Osmia bucephala, for cooperating in giving that. Now, Mike has mentioned, this is something I never look at, because again, I've got this one character that is almost always available, but let's take a look at this S2 character. So S2, sternite number 2, I believe that's what we are supposed to be looking at. Let me double check by going back to Mike's key. So here he says S2, medio apically, so towards the middle, towards the rim, a small thickened process, which appears like a small tuft of black hairs. Okay, so let's turn this, and we will, I'm going to bend it a little bit so that the pin is not covering that very area that we're interested in. And okay, orientation, we're looking at the underside. S1, there's the rim of S1. Here's S2. Here is this projecting area. We'll zoom in a little bit with black hairs. Very also distinct, but largely unneeded because of the other characters that are just very available. So this is raised up above the top of the area, and you can see the remaining areas as available. Okay, so sadly, I don't have a specimen of Osmia lignaria to show you, but bucephala is a walk in the park. Lignaria would have that, basically not what bucephala has, but does have the entire rim, which puts it in that group, and does not have the S2 configuration, nor the long, the expanded tarsal segments, nor the, what was the other one? Whatever the other configuration was. So at this point, if we go back to Mike's key, the tibial spur thing. And now if we go back, so that's takes care of this particular couplet. Bucephala, reasonably common. See it very regularly on pretty much any wooded area in the spring. So these two, cornifrons and taurus, are our introduced species, and they look almost exactly alike. The general notion is that cornifrons hair color, which is hair are quite long on both species and similar in their lengths, is always off-white, but that in taurus, it often is a burnt orange senna type of coloration. But both Mike and I have come to the conclusion after looking millions of these things that whatever, if it's an old specimen in taurus or it's just variation, a lot of time that coloration is just not there. So I'm going to show you two characters. One is the one that Mike developed, which is a really great one, but requires, and super obvious, but it requires that the genitalia be pulled or at least extended out far enough that you can see the tips of the genitalia. So I'm going to show you, and then I'll show you a character, which is what we use because we don't ever bother, sadly, but we don't have time to pull genitalia when we're doing these sorts of things. I'm going to show you a character that's Mike does not list here, but what is how we identify them and how a lot of people have to identify them because really almost nobody pulls genitalia. Okay, so if we go back here to the microscope, and let me bring the microscope level down, and we are going to come over here. I'll show the genitalia first, and we'll alternate between, I've got to change the angle here a bit, to change between cornifrons, which this is a specimen of, and taurus, because the genitalia are quite strikingly different. Terminology on genitalia is not my strong suit. Mike, do we know anything about Mike right now?
No status. I could give him a call.
Yeah, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, and see if there's something that we can do. I mean, he was on. That's the odd thing, and we're talking about his great characters, so he has a lot of insight to share with us. But
okay, I'll give him a call.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Okay, I think I want to bump up the lighting here for 1 second. So let's take this up to 70. I think that's better. And click in there. All right, we're back. All right, so here's the genitalia. This just happened to be extruded on the specimen that I had. And so what we're looking at is this thing. And again, let's see what Mike calls this. Okay, so let's do it right. The tip of the gonoforceps, okay, so this would be the gonoforceps, or at least that's the tip of it. It may be referring to the whole structure. Darn, do we need Mike here to explain this? And the base swollen. Okay, so what we're looking at is this area from the tip to this area. So if you look, you'll see that there's the other one peeking out, but they are pointing towards each other to the interior, and that this area right here, and I'll try and angle it a little bit, but I'm just changing the focus, is quite swollen. In other words, it's not anything close to a cylinder all the way down to the base. So pretty obviously swollen. If only, I'm going to just change the angle slightly. If only these things were more easy to pop out on specimens. And also you're stuck sometimes if you're doing identifications for other people, because they will not have shown them, pulled them out either. All right, I'm not going to zoom in. You can see just from this distance pointing in, there's the other one over on that side, and this base area is swollen. So I'm going to flip now to a taurus specimen, which I've pre-selected as having its genitalia exposed, and we will take a look at it, see if I get the angles correct here. Take it down a notch. If you have the time, definitely worth in some of these groups like Andrina to pull genitalia and megachyle. But it is time consuming. Try and get this closer. And here we go. Quite different. I think there's probably more characters to the genitalia that are differing too, but if we take a look here, what we have is basically a relatively smooth scimitar-shaped segment. This is not swollen, at least not remarkably swollen. You know, it does thicken down here. You can see that it has the hairs as the other one done, but it does not have the remarkable lobe coming off in this species, which is taurus. And you can see the rim, the complete rim on this side without a notch through here. So the notch would normally be here in other groups, but this one does not have it. Okay, so that.
Hey, Sam, there was a question in the chat. Is cornifrons the one that is burnt orange sienna color?
No, it's the other one. It's taurus. So let's take a look. We've got taurus on deck. Let's see, and genitalia tells us that story. Let's see if its hairs look that burnt orange. And then we're going to go in and look at clipial characters that Karen Goodall found when I was complaining about how difficult it was to tell them apart without genitalia. And she looked through our things over and over. So first of all, they have long hair, and this often happens, right? They're matted down. Now, when things get matted down, the color starts shifting around. So I could say, oh, look, here's some burnt orange looking things in here, but it's so dirty and matted that, you know, what's my confidence level on that? It's hard to really say. I'm going to flip this over. Actually, you know what? I'm not, because we're going to zoom in here in a second. I was going to change the lighting, but now what Karen found is a character that has to do with the clipeus rim and the pitting along that rim, and it requires looking under, if Karen does nothing else in her entire career, this will be the pinnacle, is finding this character for what is now a superabundant group of species. So I'm going to change the angle again, I think, on this. And this is one of the tricky parts, right? Because in order to see this character, you have to see the rim, and the rim is often occluded by the hairs on the bee. All right, somewhere as a specimen. Now let's see if we can see this a little better. So I may have to change this several times. So normally when trying to inspect this, I am going, so here, let's just to orient. Here is the rim of the Clypeus. You can see the hairs. You can see that there's pitting, and most of the Clypeus, even through the hairs, you can see that. I'm going to really zoom up now. But what we're going to look for here, unless I have messed up the two specimens, I might have to double check the, hang on for 1 second. Let me just make sure I'm looking at a torus. To begin with, I have both specimens on the same block. And indeed, I have flipped to cornifrons because I saw a peak and it was, that doesn't look like torus. So we are now looking at the, I'm going back down, we're looking at cornifron specimen. So we're looking in the same place for both, but the characters is a bit different. So sometimes there's a little tiny triangle. This is there definitely in the females. Sometimes it's in the males. I don't find it trustworthy enough, but that could be an indicator that you're dealing with cornifrons because the females have that. So back to the character at hand. So this area is underneath the hairs. We're at the highest power I can get, is heavily pitted, but the rim has a quite broad area, and we'll try a couple different angles because it's important to look at this. A quite broad area that has no pitting, and both cornifrons and torus have a similar aspect to that, width-wise and just what it looks like there in the middle. But we're going to go to the lateral sides, and in cornifrons, this distance, again, I promise that we're going to change some angles here. This distance of bare, open, unpitted area remains uniform all the way to the edge. Whereas in torus, you're going to see a peninsula of pitting come almost or to the rim there and then bear off on the sides. So, and that's it. That's all you got if you're other than genitalia in terms of telling these two apart. So let's see if I can change the angle on this so that, and not break the other specimen, so that you can see this. So functionally, what you're going to be doing is you're going to take your specimen and have to manipulate it, again, pointing out once again, the need to be adept at doing this by hand and get the angle just right so that, oh, this is good, so that you can look under these hairs. So these hairs, these long hairs on the Clypeus, only in the pitted area, right, are reaching over the rim most of the time. So if you look straight down, you can't see the rim. You'll have to look essentially at some angle underneath. And what you're looking for is that this unpitted area here is pretty much uniform across the rim, particularly in this area. You can see maybe this little sneaky thing that's bumped out, but in torus, it's going to go all the way like that with pits up onto the rim. So there's cornifrons, nice and uniform. And let's switch now to actually remove the cornifrons so don't get confused. No word from Mike?
No, I talked to him. I sent him a series of screenshots of something he could try. He's logged in and out a couple times. I have a feeling that we're flying solo.
Okay. Did he try restarting his computer, maybe?
Maybe that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Not sure.
Can he hear us?
He said he couldn't get his like mic and stuff to go.
Wow.
So he couldn't speak or have, so it wasn't sending out signal.
Oh, wait a minute. Is this the same specimen again? So we were looking at cornifrons last time. We should be looking at taurus this time. Just want to make sure by looking at the genitalia. Should never have two at once. Yeah, sure enough, I left the cornifrons one on the plate. And okay, this is getting confusing. And left the taurus, took the taurus one away. So switching this out properly now and putting it into its right box, the cornifrons box. And now I have a taurus. I'm checking one more time, the genitalia. And we are good. It actually is taurus. Now let's see if we can see the difference in the clypeus, because functionally most of us will have to use this clypeal character, and that's it for our friends. All right, that angle may be too steep. Let's see though. Yeah, we're looking at the mandibles. So we want to look at the rim, the clypeus, so we'll bring it to its side a bit more. And again, we're looking at the lateral sides, the far sides of the specimen. The clypeus rim. I have not fundamentally changed anything there. We're still looking at the twist it. Looking at, all right, we're getting better here.
Hey, Mike, we see you in the meeting. Can you hear us? Unmute? Are we functioning?
Put in a chat thing. All right, I'm going to change the angle again on this too, but here's the rim of the clypeus. You don't have a little bump, but again, that's not a solid character. You can see the pitting on the surface of the clypeus here, and you can see in the center what amounts to be a very similar sized span that is unpitted. And then when you get to the lateral sides, you can see this pitting goes way out and reaches or nearly reaches the rim of the clypeus. I'm going to add more light to this to make sure we all get to see that. Bump it up to, maybe I'll bump it up even more. Okay, and going in there. So I'm going to change the angle so we can take a look at this, because this is a tricky place to see. Okay, there's hairs in the way, but I think you see the point here. Maybe we'll look from the other side too. So here's the very edge of, this is the clypeus running here. This is the apical, or the place we would call the rim. And here is the pitting of the main portion of the clypeus. And here is an unpitted section hidden largely by hairs. Perhaps we'll shift this around. I can't really see anything more. But look over here. So here now you can see this peninsula of pitting that has come up and out, whereas in cornifrons, it would be part of a completely unpitted band all the way to that edge there. I'm going to try one more angle on this. I'm going to go look at it under my other microscope to see if I can get different. It's just got a bunch of hair problems here. Yeah. I'm going to try have other specimens and see if I can find this another specimen with a more clear rim to it. This might be a good one. Okay. So bring it in here. This also is a fluffier specimen. You can see it has you're going to see it has quite a bit of orange on it. And see already even unfocused, it's oranger. It should be a classic. And now we're going to take a look at the rim. So like a lot of these things, you have to peer under the hairs. So it's not the best angle, but this is pretty good. So here's the hairs on the clypeus, and hairs in general, I'm going to generalize to say that if you have hair on bee specimens, most of the time, perhaps always, I'm not even sure, they come out of some kind of pit. So this also reflects the hair pattern, but it's really the pitting that we're going to be looking at. So here in this torus, we have this unpitted central area, and you can see it's not a uniform, like in cornifrons, not a uniform band of unpittedness, but you have these pits come up to the rim and then move away a little bit at the far sides. But this is a really, a much clearer example than the other one of that peninsula. So I will stop there and say, I'm going to put a habitus shot on this. You can see this one's quite orange, but many others. And Mike, when we were talking beforehand, also feels like that is not sufficient to.
Point of clarification. No pits, no hairs. Does that also mean no hairs, no pits? Or are there other?
No, that's not. That is definitely not the case. So think of Hylaeus. So Hylaeus is highly pitted, but few hairs. Now, I guess I should qualify that. Maybe there are minute hairs, but since I'm photoshopping tons and tons of specimens for our photographs, I am going to say that there are many cases where there are no hairs, but there are pits. But my question is, if there are hairs, are there always pits? I'm going to bring the color back down, or the lighting to, how about there? You can see there's, again, I'll take it down a little bit more, a sort of orangish aspect, but the vibe would be, oh, that's taurus, but it's not definitive enough. So anyway, you have two really good characters, neither of which are super convenient, but that's why we're spending time with these videos to talk about these things. So let's go back now. So we're finished with the group of species. Any word from Mike? No?
Nope.
Okay. We're finished with the group of species that has a complete rim without any any notch. I'm going to show you so his next character here is the integument color. So this can be a little tricky, but he's talking about all dark versus largely blue-green, or and it can be very bright in one species, but mostly you're talking about a dark blue metallic overtone to some aspects of it, but it can be really dark. So sometimes you can begin to second guess whether you're looking at a black specimen or not. But the black specimens, as you'll see from this, what I identified as intermis a long time ago, and I was hoping that we would confirm that with Mike here, is, I'm going to show the top, I guess, first. And we will do the full screen thing, is black. So you don't have any of this, although that does look a little bit blue, doesn't it, in that light? So maybe it isn't what I thought it was. Anyway,
you think it is?
It should be. It should be intermis, okay. Which is should be all black. And when I'm not looking at it under that particular rim light, again, my other scope, it appears to be all black. So this would be something that we would want Mike to be involved in. And I'm going to show the notch in T7, which is separating it from those four that we were just looking at. And it's not a big notch. So, and there's two things, T7, and then the area behind it also has a notch, which at this point, I can't recall if that secondary notch is coming from is coming from T7 or is coming from the sternites. Or do I have that confused? Okay, so here is this huge notch thing here, and here is the rim with a relatively small emargination on it. And we'll see this over and over again. But that's helping separate out this group from the other species. So let's go to Mike's key again. And we're skipping over now all the dark ones because I have no other dark ones other than that one. And I feel less than 100% confident that I have separated out from this clade, which keeps in the past has changed several times. So we come to a character here, which basically says that if you have a Osmia species that in the east, that is the color of an algochlorella, algochloropsis species, in other words, bright, super bright green, brilliant green, race car green, whatever you want to call it. It is this species illinoensis, very uncommon, and oddly, there is a recent record from Virginia from the state heritage people. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Of, I believe it was 2 specimens from a power line cut in the mountains. The nearest other record, I want to say, was Illinois. Possibly there's some old records, we'd have to look, from Indiana. And here, as we've seen a number of different kinds, is this huge range jump, which in most cases means that we are missing populations between those 2 areas because we're not looking hard enough, or we are not looking in the right areas to find these species, or we're simply just not sampling. There are literally trillions of bees out there in any year, and we're just sampling handfuls of handfuls. So anyway, bright shiny green, illinoensis, great species, seems to be in decline, and Mike has seen many fewer over the years in the region, particularly compared to historical ones too. So it does, for some reasons, appear to be declining. So the remaining species now that we have to deal with is the giant clade of things that are that have metallic blue overtones. And sometimes it's a blue or a green. So for example, Osmia pumila, very common species, it's mostly showing it's in the males a reflection that is I would call it a green blue reflection, and others are straightforward dark blue. So anyway, in the green blue, but dull, not very brilliant or bright colored. So here is another, I'm just reading Mike's things as we go along here too. So we have T3 to 5 hairs, all are mostly dark and black, and T versus T3 to 4 hairs are pale white. And when we look at that, we see, so sadly, I don't have any of these specimens. They are really boreal or very far to the north, so I can't talk about that, but it seems relatively straightforward that we're looking at the hair color on the abdomen on the top. So skipping over now to things that are more regionally appropriate, we're looking at the tarsal segments on 2 and 3 modified compressed, appearing different from the 4 tarsi, and mid-tarsal segments 2 and 3 similar to 4 tarsi, not modified. Okay, so I believe, I do have Felty, but I'm going to say I only have one specimen, and it is a female, so we're not going to address that one. And that's true. I only have, I've seen the males, but not that. So we can't really address the that species group there, and the characters. Similima, so this is one I think I have specimens of, and I don't. Sorry, I gave away a whole lot of my specimens a while ago, and so I'm the females are in Similima are easy to tell apart, but here you can see we're dealing with different set of characters that are more complex. So the other part is that I'm not sure that that's in the female, that the antennae are very distinctive. So I'm going to skip that part there. I can't remember what we have some different characters in Discover Life Guide. We might return to that the next time we're working here, and hopefully we'll have Mike back to talk about some of these things. So S4, this is the character that often has tricks people. The S4, I call it the rim being Ziploc bagged versus not Ziploc bagged. I'm pretty sure we covered this the last time. We saw a specimen under the microscope, and you're seeing what's called varyingly narrowly grooved or a double edge, and it's microscopic. So this is not something that's particularly obvious. You have to drill in with your microscope, and after you see a few versions of it, it becomes apparent, but it's not super obvious. We'll go there because we have specimens that have that character. So when we were looking at Chilibia and Texana and Cerulescens and Georgica, we were seeing these sorts of characters. And when we go back here, the separation here, so Chilibia and Texana are both Circium or why am I fading, are thistle specialists, and Georgica is a specialist on composites, so it's out now on things like Daisy fleabane is where I catch it an awful lot, and Cerulescens is an introduced species. I don't have any specimens on hand for that one. I do have some of these others, so let's pull Georgica, and we're looking at lateral. So basically large versus small species are separating out these two groups. Size alone would do that, and it looks like lateral ocelli closer to eye margin than to edge of vertex is a straight measurement that helps with the separation of the two. Let's look at georgica. That's the one that people tend to see the most. And pull out a specimen here. So georgica, in addition to what Mike is talking about, so Mike is very focused here on the on characters. We'll look up in Discover Life, the characters that have to do with genitalia. But he also talks about the propodial triangle area being shiny. But in addition to that, if we can get a good look here, actually, let's see if we can see the Ziploc bag S4. And then we're going to jump to the slot-like character of the propodial pit. So propodial pits turn out to be...
I'm going to give us a tight 10-minute warning.
10 minute? Okay, got it. And, oops. Where did I? No, there it is. Okay. Thought I had lost the computer. So georgica is relatively small, similar to pumila and atraventris. We're looking at for S4 here. I need more light to see this. So, but just to orient, that's going to be the S4 rim. There's the hair tufts of S3, which are often retracted. So let's go here and up our lighting quite a bit. So I'll have to change the angle a little bit, but we are looking edge on. So here is the groove that Mike talks about right here. There is the split rim, the double rim, however you want to call it, Ziploc bag. There's rim number 1 and the lower rim, rim number 2 there. And other groups, in other words, not those 4 that we were just looking at, are going to have just a simple, like over here, a simple rim that is not split. Let's see if I'm going to change the angle just a tiny bit. See if that does anything for us. And then we're going to look at the propodial pit and the propodium cerulescens, or ceruleum. Is it ceruleum? Cerulescens is not very common any longer in a lot of areas. They seem to have retracted out of most of their southern range. It's an introduced species to begin with. Probably has some kind of interesting early history. It's European. Okay, there is a better look at the double rim. So the double rim basically opens up away from the far lateral sides and from the very tip. And so you have this area right here. That's groove. So Mike would call this a groove, and I would call it the Ziploc bag. Other people call it double rims. So there's that. I should say that if you were looking at this specimen just on the underside and did not notice the double rim, put this back under here, you would likely want to call this Osmia pumila because of just the general pattern. You can even see the double rim up here though, but if you're not looking for it, it's easy to overlook. But this general aspect of the underside, you spend a lot of time looking at undersides when you're looking at osmias, is very pumila-like. So we're going to see if we can inspect now the propodial pit. And we can. I'm going to zoom right in, see if we can keep the same perspective. And okay, so first of all, this area right here would be the propodial triangle area. And in Cerulescens, I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah, Cerulescens. This would be largely mirror-like and shiny, and you can see there's a lot of texturing and even some striations at the base going on there. And what we're looking for is the cursor is on is maybe a little bit difficult to see. I'm going to angle it up a little bit more. Is a slot-like propodial pit. So the propodial pit, I'm not sure what the derivation of the function is. It's not something that we really see in other species. Find it here first. Is somewhere on the rear face of the propodium, and different species have quite strikingly different, maybe if I shine the light in here a little bit differently, have quite strikingly different shapes, sizes, textures, and patterns to the propodial pit. So they can be extremely useful. One issue, though, is how you would prepare your specimen. So in this case, the abdomen is drooping down. A lot of times you'll, what another set of useful features is on T1, which is out of focus right here, the face that you cannot see, which is the vertical face that's facing the propodium, sometimes in some species is shiny, and in other species it is dulled by these kind of tessellations of lines or shagreening. So this is hard to see because it is so dark. And you can see that there's a deep crevice here. It's basically a linear rectangle, long and stretched out there. And this would be the propodial pit area. So here's the junction between the thorax and the abdomen. And just above that is this propodial pit area. And we'll probably see this in several other cases because it is so useful. The pattern in those pits. So sometimes that central area can be almost completely round, and other times it can be egg-shaped, other times linear, sometimes bright and shiny, sometimes with lateral shiny spots, and other times completely dulled to the interior. I don't appreciate away all my Cerulescens. Yep. Cerulescens not present. But if we go to Discover Life, I think we'll see that Cerulescens has a large round-shaped propodial pit. Here we are in the males. I've been working on the guide there, and you can see that when we're working with these things, the propodial pit is one of the ones that we can move around where the questions go, but we suggest that's one of the best things to look at. So here, narrow parallel-sided trench. There's only 4, you can see from the green there, species that are scored for having that. I'm not sure why we are, oh, there we go. Or maybe not. Why this is not.
I was having issues with it earlier today. It was being slow.
Okay. It did show up, but it is, anyway, Osmia georgica is one of the, I'm going to restart this. Oh, yeah, it seems to be, I'm going to try, oh, you know what? The entire, nothing is clicking on that. Let me go to a different browser. That
Well,
browser.
it's 2 o'clock anyway.
Oh, it's 2 o'clock anyway. Okay. All right. Anyway, if the browser was functioning, which it appears to not, you would see that this is a useful place to look. And a lot of times there's more pattern and detail in the propodial pits than can be easily expressed. Wow, now it's flickering. Oh, something happened there. Then can be easily expressed in a guide because it's more nuanced. So looking at the propodial pits in Osmia is useful. Let's see if we can get it to do something now. There we go. So when I don't know why there's more than 4. Oh, actually I do, because some of these probably aren't scored because we haven't seen them to classify the propodial pit. But there's Osmia georgica, which has that deep trench-like thing. So any questions, Claire, before we have to go?
There is a question in the chat that is like more of a continuing conversation. So, Laurel, I'm gonna cut the recording unless anybody has a final, identification related question. All right, fantastic. The recording is being stopped.